Moving into Geton Estate felt like stepping into one of those welcome to suburbia starter packs. But just as I was settling into my picturesque new life, reality came knocking. Literally. And behind my front door stood Karen Sharma, HOA overlord and self-proclaimed guardian of property values. She held a stack of paperwork so thick it could stop a bullet, her expression as tight as her pinched little bun. That was the first red flag. The second, the way she smiled, like a shark at an all-you-can-eat buffet. At first, it was just the usual HOA tyranny, petty fines, absurd violations, and threats disguised as friendly notices. But then, things got worse. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was waging war. People whispered about the things she had done to those who stepped out of line, but no one dared fight back. Not until she made the mistake of targeting my father. She didn't know who he was. She saw only an old blind man in a wheelchair, an easy target. But she had no idea that in trying to break him, she would shatter the very foundation of her own power. What she set in motion couldn't be undone. And by the time she realized the truth, it was far too late. Because my father wasn't just any man, and the war she started, it was about to bring everything crashing down. Before we dive into the madness, the blackmail, and the wild wheelchair escapades, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below letting me know where you're tuning in from. Whether you're from a small town, a big city, or somewhere off the map, I want to hear your thoughts, especially if you've ever tangled with an HOA Karen. Let's swap war stories. My name's Anthony Cowper, and about a year ago I thought I'd found my dream house in Geton Estate. It was a two-story home on a quiet street called Meadow Court, with daffodils in the front yard and a sweet view of the local park behind the backyard fence. The house had wide doorways and an open floor plan, perfect for my father, Toby. See, Dad is both blind and in a wheelchair. He lost his sight in a car accident years ago. We'll talk about that later. It's part of our complicated family history. Since then, he relies on a combination of muscle memory, a well-trained sense of hearing, and that old white cane he keeps folded on his lap. I was unloading boxes when we heard the sharp rap on our door. I checked the peephole, some lady in a bright pink jacket with a menacing grin. I opened up, bracing myself. She said, "Hello, I'm Mrs. Sharma, or you can call me Karen. I'm the president of the Geton Estate HOA. She thrust a bulging folder into my arms. "Here's your membership contract." I blinked. Membership contract? I never heard about an HOA. Our purchase papers hadn't mentioned it. Plus, the realtor never said anything about monthly fees. Karen pinned me with a look so stiff it could pass as a museum statue. "We formed recently by majority vote. Everyone pays $300 a month, non-negotiable. I trust you'll be signing soon." I felt a wave of confusion and annoyance. I stammered, "But that's not in my mortgage docs. How can it be mandatory?" Dad maneuvered his wheelchair forward, carefully tracing the edge of the hallway with one hand so he wouldn't crash into a box. "What's going on, Anthony? Who's this?" Karen's eyes flicked to Dad's white cane resting on his lap. Then she forced a polite smile. "Oh, hello, sir. Did you know about our lovely HOA? We just want to keep the community looking uniform." Dad, being Dad, tried to crack a joke. He said, "Uniform, huh? Then I'll just paint my door the same color as the rest of the block? Well, actually, I'm blind, so I wouldn't know. Maybe you can pick for me, because I can't see it anyway." Karen's lips moved like she was trying to laugh politely, but she ended up looking more offended than amused. "Yes, well, we do have an approved color palette. Also, if you have any special equipment," she eyed Dad's wheelchair, "we'll need to ensure it meets aesthetic guidelines." My jaw dropped. "It's a wheelchair, not a flaming statue. Are you serious?" Karen shrugged. "We take pride in our uniform look. I'm sure you understand." It was my first taste of her brand of community spirit. She left soon after, warning me that I had 7 days to sign on the dotted line or face enforcement measures. I almost laughed. This was America. No one could just barge in and say, "Hey, pay me or else," right? Dad shook his head once I closed the door. "I've been around the block, son. Don't underestimate bullies like that. They're not always logical. She might mean business." I brushed it off at first, telling him not to worry. My father, the governor, blind or not, still carried weight. If we really got in trouble, I assumed we could wave some official letters around, talk to a lawyer. But Dad told me not to use his political ties as a crutch. He said, "We need to handle it the right way, by the law, not strong-arm them with my name." As much as I respected that, I had a hunch we might need his influence eventually. A few days later, weird stuff started happening. I woke up to find our mailbox, just installed with a stylish little bird decal, had vanished. In its place stood a standard HOA-approved box, along with an invoice for $175. Karen left a note. This was necessary due to non-compliance. Payment due in 3 days. Dad asked, "What's going on? I hear metal scraping outside." I huffed. "They replaced our mailbox without permission. Now they want us to pay for it." He frowned, tapping a knuckle on his wheelchair arm. "Mailboxes are property of the homeowner, not the HOA. That's crossing a line." I tried complaining to the local police department. The officer who answered sounded bored. "This is a civil matter, sir. Sort it out with your HOA." Then he hung up. That left me no option but to text my realtor. The realtor responded with a shrug emoji, basically saying, "HOAs can be tough. Sorry." Real helpful. Dad said, "I get the feeling they've done this to others, too. Let's see how far they go." Pretty soon, Dad and I found out the answer. Far enough to chain a wheelchair to a porch. But we'll get there. We started receiving letters every day, reminders to pay the $300 monthly, plus violation notices for the wildest stuff. Grass too tall, cars not parked at the correct angle, and unapproved door color. Dad joked that they might fine us for "the air smells too weird." I responded that if they tried, I'd happily store a skunk in the garage for extra pungency. One sunny morning, Dad decided to sit on our front porch and listen to the birds because he loves hearing them chirp. He carried his phone in his jacket pocket, along with a small radio he uses to follow news briefs. I was inside rummaging for coffee beans when I heard him shout, "Anthony, get out here!" I ran out and found Dad's wheelchair literally chained to the porch railing. A thick chain with a padlock wrapped around the wheel and the railing slats. Dad's face was flushed and he was gripping the armrests. "I heard footsteps behind me," he said, voice shaking, and then the sound of metal scraping. They were so fast I couldn't turn around in time. Before I realized what was happening, they were gone. Dread slammed my gut. "Dad, are you okay?" He nodded stiffly. "Just angry. My foot's pinned awkwardly. Hurry, unchain me." I raced to the garage, grabbed bolt cutters, and got rid of the chain. Attached to the chain was a violation slip. "Unauthorized medical device on common area. Fine, $500. Contact HOA president." Dad raged. "What in the blazing bananas? Medical device? This is my personal wheelchair. And this is our private porch. They've gone too far." I immediately called the police to report an assault on a disabled person. The responding officer seemed apologetic but explained that unless I had clear video or an eyewitness, it'd be tough to charge anyone. Dad tried describing the footsteps and said it sounded like 2 or 3 people. The officer shrugged. "Might be best to talk to your HOA. Maybe it's a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I practically yelled. "They chained my father's wheelchair to the porch. He's blind. He could have gotten seriously hurt or panicked. This is disgusting." Still, the officer left, telling us he'd file a report. That night, I installed a security camera on our porch. Dad insisted on putting a second camera facing the driveway. "They messed with the wrong old man," he muttered. "I can't see them, but I can hear them, and next time, we'll have proof." The following weekend, our neighbor, an older fellow named Monroe, knocked on our door. He quietly slid a folder into my hands. "I've been collecting these notes for months," he whispered. "Karen and her crew have forced at least 8 families off this street alone. They want your house, too. I think they're flipping properties for profit." He pointed to lines in the folder, copies of old deeds, suspiciously cheap sale prices, and records showing the same LLC repeatedly buying up Geton Estate homes at below-market rates. Then that LLC sold them for huge profits, advertising the neighborhood as having a strict, exclusive HOA. Dad listened carefully as Monroe explained. "I'm hearing a pattern. They harass folks, fine them, mess with them until they either join or sell cheap. Then the LLC flips it. Karen is probably behind the LLC." Monroe nodded. "A rumor says her cousin runs the local building inspection office. That's how they condemn houses for made-up violations and bully people even more." Dad's mouth hardened into a grim line. "So they scare away homeowners. That's how they get them to sign. or else they sabotage the property. It's a whole racket." Monroe's voice trembled. "I tried warning you earlier, but Karen threatened me. I'm sorry." He left quickly, looking over his shoulder like he expected goons to jump out of the bushes. I pulled the door shut and locked it. Dad sighed. "We can't let them keep doing this, son." We agreed to gather evidence. Dad insisted we do it quietly, so we didn't tip them off. He was especially insistent on not revealing he was the governor. He's a proud old man, I'll give him that. If I have to use my title every time someone bullies me, then what good are the actual laws for everyday folks? I admired that. But at the same time, I worried that Karen might do something more extreme, and I was right. That evening, Dad and I heard a knock around midnight. We were both up reading. Well, Dad was listening to an audiobook. I was skimming the web. I checked the camera feed. A group of 5 people, all wearing hoodies, stood on our porch. One was Karen, I'd bet my life on it, but she wore a baseball cap low over her face. I recognized her posture. She started pounding on the door, calling out, "Inspection! Open up! We have reason to believe you're storing unsafe materials." Another voice cackled. "We can do this the easy way or the fun way." We had them on camera. Dad whispered, "Lock the door. Don't open it." We called the police. They tried to break in. We heard them trying to pry the lock. Dad clutched his phone, blinking blindly in the darkness, while I held a kitchen knife, heart pounding. Then the wail of sirens cut through the night. Our intruders scattered like roaches. The officer who arrived took one look at our camera footage and muttered, "That's definitely criminal trespass. Send me a copy of the video." But in the back of my mind, I wondered if the local PD was on Karen's side. We still had no arrests, no direct confrontation. The officer left after taking a statement. "We'll do extra patrols," he said, but that was it. 2 days later, Dad's phone rang. The caller ID said, "Unknown." When he answered, the voice on the line whispered, "Toby, is that you? I know what you did years ago, cheating on your wife with my mom. You will pay for this." Dad's face went white as a sheet. He tapped the phone's speaker button so I could hear too. The voice continued, "Don't think being blind or being the governor will save you." Then a click. The line went dead. Dad was so shaken he nearly dropped the phone. "Payback? This must be about that affair I had, the one that made me leave you and your mom." I swallowed hard. The old anger in my gut rose again, but I forced it down. "We suspected Karen might be related to your ex. I guess that's the confirmation. She's out for revenge." Dad bowed his head. "I never meant to hurt anyone but your mother and I. Oh, son, I wish I could take it back." I felt a stab of pity. Dad has carried that guilt for decades. "We'll deal with it," I said, trying to sound confident. "But we need backup, real backup." Dad reluctantly agreed. He called an old contact at the state's attorney general's office, and he was able to get someone's attention. They told him, "Send us all your evidence. We'll investigate for corruption, but keep it quiet. We don't want them spooked yet." We compiled every scrap of evidence: video of the chain on Dad's wheelchair, records of forced sales, Monroe's folder. A week passed with no sign of Karen. We thought maybe she backed off. Then, one Sunday morning, Dad was out in the yard, carefully feeling around with his cane to enjoy the fresh air. He couldn't see it, but I spotted Karen marching up behind him. I sprinted outside. She pinned Dad with a sneer. "Too bad you can't see me," she hissed. "But I want you to hear this. You have 48 hours to pay all your back HOA dues plus fines totaling $4,000 or you're out. We'll get the city to condemn your house for non-compliance, and if you call your fancy political friends, it won't help. We have our own connections." Dad turned toward her voice with forced calm. "I know who you are. I know about the property flipping, and I know you're doing this to push me out because of some old grudge. Karen, you're playing with fire." She barked a laugh. "What's an old blind man going to do, tell the newspapers? Not unless you want your personal secrets aired. That's right, Toby. I know all about you, your messy past, how you left your wife and kid. Imagine the scandal for a governor who's no shining family man." My blood boiled. "That's enough. Leave now or I'll call the cops." Karen looked me up and down like I was a bug. "Go ahead, Anthony. See how far you get." She tossed a violation notice on the grass, turned on her heel, and marched off. It said, "Unauthorized blind resident mobility device on lawn. Fine, $200. I nearly tore it in half. Dad exhaled shakily. "They're desperate. They know we're onto them." We ran inside and called the AG's office again. They said, "We're preparing a sting operation. Hang tight. We need them to do something overtly illegal in front of law enforcement. Dad smirked ironically. Chaining me up wasn't overt enough? Breaking in? Good grief. Get them on camera forcing an entry, or catch them bragging about their property flips and extortion, the official said. We'll move in. So we set a trap. We pretended to cave. We posted a letter on our door saying, we cannot afford the fines, we are prepared to leave. We spread rumors that Dad was so embarrassed about his affair scandal that he was fleeing quietly. We hoped Karen would come in for the final blow, maybe forcing us to sign our deed over. Our hidden cameras were ready. 3 days later, a black SUV pulled up. I recognized one of Karen's sidekicks, plus 2 men in suits. Dad was in the living room, phone in hand, earpiece letting him hear me from outside. I was set to greet them at the door. The plan was to lure them inside so we could record them threatening or demanding some illegal signature. The AG's team would be waiting down the street. They knocked. I opened the door with a trembling smile. Hi. Yes, we decided to move out. Please just don't chain my father again, or do anything else crazy. Karen stepped in, smirking. I'm so glad you see reason. She glanced around, not realizing Dad was right behind the wall. We have the transfer papers right here. Sign over your property to this LLC at a reasonable price, and we'll let you leave peacefully. One of the men added, and if you don't sign, well, it won't go well. We can't guarantee your father's safety. Blind folks have so many accidents, you know. That did it. Dad rolled forward, ramming the side of his wheelchair into the man's shin. Oops, he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. Blind accident, you know how it is, right? Karen's face went pale. You were eavesdropping? You bet, Dad growled. And we've been recording everything, the entire time. Karen's eyes flashed with panic. She spun toward the open front door, but the moment she crossed the threshold, 6 law enforcement officers swarmed in, led by the AG's friend. They pinned the suits, seized the documents, and slapped cuffs on Karen, who shrieked like a furious hyena. As they marched her to a squad car, she spat at Dad. You coward! Hiding behind your position. You can't see me, so I bet you can't see me flipping you off right now. Dad gave a dark chuckle. I can't see your finger, Karen, but I can hear those handcuffs. Enough for me. Her final words as they dragged her away. You ruined my mother's life, Toby. I'll never forgive you. The old family drama was out in the open at last. Dad looked haunted, but also relieved. I guess she really is tied to that old affair. Sometimes your mistakes come back in the ugliest ways. After the dust settled, we found out the entire HOA board was in on the scam. They were pocketing thousands monthly. People with no strong connections had crumbled under the pressure, forced to sell cheap. Now, they had charges for extortion, harassment, assault, breaking and entering, and who knows what else. The legitimate homeowners in Geton Estate, it turned out, never even voted for an HOA. The majority vote had been completely faked. The local news ate it up. Governor's blindness exploited by corrupt HOA. The story spread across the state, shining a huge spotlight on how HOAs can become tyrannical if nobody checks them. The Attorney General used the case to push new laws. The Toby Act, they called it. Dad rolled his eyes, but secretly liked it. The law banned any forced HOA membership without explicit written agreement from every homeowner. It also set strict rules on how fines could be issued. Dad and I ended up with battered door frames and a stolen mailbox fiasco, but we got justice for ourselves and for dozens of neighbors. Sarah Kim returned to her home in peace. Monroe gave us a thumbs up from next door, no longer hiding from Karen's watchers. The best part? Dad's secret identity ended up being a huge part of the rescue, but ironically, it also forced him to confront his old mistakes. I could tell he was torn up about it. He told me, son, all I wanted was to help you. Maybe if I'd been a better dad decades ago, I wouldn't have left a trail of heartbreak. I'm sorry. I placed a hand on his shoulder. We can't change the past, Dad, but you showed up for me. You stuck it out even when it got ugly. That's more than I ever expected. We ended with a big father-son hug that left me feeling like maybe we were truly a family again. Sometimes you don't see redemption coming, especially when you're blind. But he found it anyway. We still live in that house, and you know what I did with the front porch? I installed a big, loud wind chime, ugly as sin, clangy as a marching band, and definitely not HO approved. It's there to remind me that I'm free to do what I like in my own home, And no one, not even a Karen with illusions of grandeur, can chain us down again. Thanks for reading, folks. If you ever find yourself battling a rogue HOA, remember, you don't need an influential protector to stand up for your rights. Gather evidence, call an attorney, get help from local or state authorities if necessary, and if some bully tries to chain your wheelchair or break your door, know that the law is on your side. And if you happen to have a blind, wheelchair-using father who's also the governor, well, that certainly doesn't hurt either.